Frederick County Public Schools is committed to protecting the privacy and confidentiality of our staff and students' data. FCPS provides annual professional development to all staff so they know exactly what they need to do to protect FCPS's data privacy. Employees, students, and families entrust Frederick County Public Schools with their personal information, and protecting that data privacy is critical. As the digital ecosystem in Frederick County Public School expands to meet our growing needs, employee training must expand as well. Training is equally as important as our firewall and virus protection software. FCPS is committed to educating our end users, developing processes to identify and protect the most sensitive data, and implementing technologies to find and block threats. It's easy to make mistakes that could put our data at risk without even knowing it. Mistakes such as opening emails from unknown sources, clicking on links contained within those emails, and sharing passwords. Poor password practices such as saving passwords in a web browser, inappropriately handling personal identifiable information or other sensitive data, leaving electronic devices in unlocked rooms or vehicles where they or data can be stolen, storing any data on a thumb drive or USB key. This training module will assist staff in building a better understanding of data we use and how to protect it. Let's get started. Email phishing. Don't take the bait. What is phishing? Phishing is an attempt to obtain personal information such as usernames and passwords for malicious reasons. Cybercriminals accomplish this by disguising themselves as a trustworthy source. Phishing is most often carried out over email. It is important to know how to spot a phishing attempt. Take a moment and review the list of tips for identifying a potential phishing scam. Pay particular attention to common topics that are ripe for phishing. If things seem fishy, they most likely are, so take precautions. Do not open emails from unknown sources, do not open attachments or links in unsolicited emails, and do not respond to suspicious emails in any manner. If you receive a questionable email, right-click the email and mark as junk. Now let's talk about the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 1974, better known as FERPA. The first thing that you need to know about FERPA is that as an FCPS employee, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act legally and ethically requires you to protect the confidentiality of our students' information. In FCPS, we classify data in 3 categories. Level 1, directory information. Level 2, limited directory information. And Level 3, personal identifiable information, or PII. Information in all categories should be handled carefully, but the restrictions on the manner and means of use, storage, and transfer of information increases as you move up the levels. Remember the golden rule: if in doubt, don't give out. The first level is directory information. Directory information is information that may be disclosed without written consent. It is information that is generally not considered harmful or an invasion of privacy if released. However, all data should be safeguarded. Directory information may only be included and worked on in the following FCPS environments: Google accounts, FCPS-supported websites, fcps.org domain. As you can see, there are many different kinds of directory information. Take a moment to review the list. And as always, parents can choose not to have their child's directory information shared. We explain to parents how to do that in our calendar handbook. Parents who do not want directory information disclosed must notify the school in writing by September 30th or within 30 days of the day of their enrollment. The next level, Level 2, is limited directory information. What is limited directory information? It includes things like FCPS student ID, information about students' parents, guardians, or family members, graded assignments, a student's address or phone number, or their date and place of birth. Limited directory information may be released unless specifically prohibited by parent or eligible student to approved organizations of any combination of parents and teachers, branches of the military, person engaged by a school or board of education to confirm a home address or phone number, law enforcement, emergency health services, Maryland Community Colleges, Maryland Higher Education Commission. Limited directory information may be developed and stored in any FCPS provided or approved systems. It is the responsibility of the data owner to ensure that the information is only shared with approved individuals or organizations who have a legitimate educational interest without prior written consent. The third level is Personal Identifiable Information, or PII. PII is information about an individual that can be used to distinguish or trace an individual's identity, such as name, social security number, date of birth, mother's maiden name, email address, driver's license number, passport number, or personal health information. PII is information used to identify a living individual. A name alone is not enough to identify a specific individual. For example, Jane Doe's name alone is not enough information to determine which specific Jane Doe. But Jane Doe along with her address and date of birth, or Jane Doe and her social security number, are enough information to specifically identify which Jane Doe. Have you ever been on the phone with your bank or credit card company? They may ask for your name plus several other pieces of information in order to personally identify you before discussing any business matters. Combining the multiple pieces of information make it PII. So how do we identify PII in FCPS? You need to understand PII includes any records maintained by Frederick County Public Schools which contain information that, alone or in combination, would make it possible to identify an individual with reasonable certainty. Take a look at some examples of what we consider PII. Here are some important things you need to know about handling PII. Must always be conducted within the fcps.org domain. PII may be shared between individuals with a legitimate educational interest using the FCPS file share system. Other secure FCPS provided and approved software. PII may not be shared in Google. The use of email to distribute PII is discouraged. However, it is not a security incident if the source and destination email addresses are at fcps.org. All individuals have a legitimate educational interest and need to know the PII being shared. Let me read you a practical example. Mrs. Smith, an FCPS teacher, will participate in an IEP meeting later today. To prepare for the meeting, she needs to share information with Mr. Jones, another FCPS teacher. Using her FCPS email account, lisa.smith@fcps.org, she emails the pertinent information to include the IEP itself as an attachment to Mr. Jones's FCPS email account, george.jones@fcps.org. Both email accounts are within the FCPS domain at fcps.org, and both individuals have a legitimate educational interest and need to know the PII or personal identifiable information being shared. This is an acceptable use. However, it would be better to share a document from SharePoint, OneDrive, or refer the recipient to the system that stores the information. Let's continue by looking at another practical example. Mrs. Smith, an FCPS teacher, will participate in an IEP meeting later today. To prepare for the meeting, she needs to share information with Mr. Jones, another FCPS teacher. Changing the scenario above, Mrs. Smith needs to communicate with Mr. Jones. However, she chooses to use her home, personal email account to send the communication. This is not acceptable use. Sharing PII outside of the fcps.org domain is prohibited. PII may not be shared in Google or outside of FCPS via email. The next concept you have to understand when we are talking about data privacy is enrolling. Enrolling student data is the entry or upload of student names or other information into any software application used for educational purposes. Enrolling sometimes occurs in a protected environment under a signed contract with a vendor on behalf of the school system. Under these circumstances, student data is enrolled and protected within the program since FCPS has contracted with the approved vendor to protect confidentiality. Enrolling students under these circumstances follows Level 3 PII. Enrollment occurs in a protected environment contracted by FCPS. However, there is another kind of enrolling which is not acceptable. Here is an unauthorized enrollment example. Enrolling may include individual teachers or staff entering names or other information into instructional open educational resources or free applications in agreement with the terms and conditions of the provider. This is an unprotected environment. Enrolling student data under those circumstances does not follow Level 3 PII. Using an unprotected environment is prohibited. Here is a practical example about enrolling. Mrs. Todd finds a free software program online called Math is Fun. She is very excited to learn it is a good fit into her lesson plan and supports the curriculum. She opens the application, clicks on Accept, and accepts the terms and conditions as defined by the software vendor. The program asks her to enter her students' names, student ID numbers, and date of birth. Mrs. Todd entered the requested information so her students could begin using the program. She enrolled her students' data into Math is Fun and legally accepted the terms and conditions on behalf of FCPS. Enrolling PII in an open educational resource in an unprotected environment is not permitted. We've just learned some of the basics related to data privacy. Frederick County Public Schools takes data privacy seriously. Take a few minutes to review best practices. Protecting FCPS data is everyone's responsibility. Now it's time to take the quiz. Good luck!